Hello and welcome to Prime Minister's Questions with commentary by Graham Hughes. That's me. Welcome to everyone in the chat. If you want to chat during the Prime Minister's Questions, you want to put out your point of view, please enter that into the chat. You need to be a subscriber to the channel in order to do so. Here we go.
Questions. Lynn Brown.
Number one, Mr. Speaker.
Number
Prime
one.
Minister.
Number one.
Mr.
Hello.
Speaker, I know
Hello
the
to
whole
Note
House
100.
will want to thank the emergency services for their ongoing response to the shocking incident in Nottingham yesterday. Our thoughts are with those injured and with the families of those who lost their lives. Today is also the 6th anniversary of the Grenfell Tower fire. We remember the 72 people who lost their lives and remain as committed as ever to ensuring that such a tragedy can never happen again.
Oh yeah, that's why you got rid of
Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House,
they didn't. They
have
haven't done that
such
yet.
meetings later
Grenfell
today.
will happen again,
Brown.
thanks to
Right,
these
well, Mr.
scumbags.
Speaker, can I associate myself with the words of the Prime Minister? Our hearts are with the City of Nottingham, and we also remember those 72 killed at Grenfell and support those still fighting for justice.
The Tories actually answer a question.
According
The
to
Prime
the
Minister
Office
answered
of
a
National
question.
Statistics, in January, food prices were rising at 16.8% a year. The most
16.8.
recent figures show food prices rising by a whopping 19.1%, making a mockery of his pledge to halve inflation. Does he honestly think people won't notice?
Mr. Speaker, of course, I acknowledge that the cost of living is rising for families, and that's why my first priority at the beginning of the year is to halve inflation. I'm pleased to say that inflation is now falling, and in the latest set of estimates, we remain on track to do so. With regard to food prices, we're not alone in experiencing high food price inflation like many other countries in Europe. That's why the Chancellor has already spoken to the CMA, who are looking at the grocery industry, and we continue to support families with the cost of living, notably by paying half of their energy bills.
Palsy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's a fact that Labour have never left government with unemployment lower than when they came in. And figures released yesterday show that there are now 4 million more people in work than when Labour were last in power. Does the Prime Minister agree that the security of a good job will always be better than Labour's dependency culture?
Good job. Work for an hour
my
a week.
honourable friend
That's a
is
job.
absolutely
According to these
right
clowns.
to point out Labour's poor record
Absolute
on
nonsense.
jobs. And yesterday's
Record of
figures
jobs.
showed that the UK economy is resilient, with the number of people
it's
in
not.
employment now at a record level, Mr. Speaker.
That is not
By
what's
no means
happening.
complacent, but the inactivity rate continues to fall and the unemployment rate remains at historically low levels. That is a Conservative government delivering for our country.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
I join with the Prime Minister in his comments about the terrible attack in Nottingham yesterday and in tribute to the work of our emergency services. The thoughts of the whole House are with the victims and the people of that great city. I also join him in remembering the 72 people who lost their lives in the Grenfell Tower fire. The victims and their families are always in our hearts, but 6 years on, the justice they're fighting for is long overdue. Mr. Speaker, all across the country, people are worried about their bills, the price of the weekly shop and the spiralling mortgage rates.
Yeah, mortgages.
So why has the Tory party spent this last week arguing over which of them gets a peerage?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, my points on this are very clear, in line with a long-established convention of previous Prime Ministers having the ability to submit honours. I followed the process to the letter in convention with long-standing process. It is, by the way, Mr. Speaker, a long-standing convention that Prime Ministers on both sides of this House have followed in the same way that I did.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, the truth is, for all his tough talk after the event, the Prime Minister did sign off the honours list. And that means, Mr. Speaker, that those who threw a Downing Street party the night before the late Queen sat alone at her husband's funeral will now receive awards from the King. If he's so tough, why didn't he block it?
Weak, that's why.
Mr. Speaker,
He's
as
weak.
I said, I and the government follow due process and convention. Prime ministers of both parties
follow
have
convention?
always upheld the convention.
Is that why you tried to use a statutory instrument to get through an amendment to your
My predecessors may not have
policing bill?
agreed with
and your
Labour's
protest
choices
bill?
of Tom Watson or Shami Chakrabarti. But the same precedent, Mr. Speaker, the same precedent stood then as it does now. And I'd expect a knight like him to understand that.
Blair ministry left government with employment higher than they wanted. Yeah.
I think we will. I think we will have more if we carry on. It'll be more outside rather than here. Keir Starmer.
Honour should be for public service, not Tory cronies. But Mr. Speaker, isn't this the case? He was too weak to block Johnson's list. And that also means that those who spent their time helping cover up Johnson's law-breaking are rewarded by becoming lawmakers for the rest of their lives. Is his message to the British public, if you don't like it, tough?
Mr. Speaker, it's right that we use
about
the honour system to recognise people, almost 2,000 people a year, from members of the England Lionesses team to the first Asian police officer in Greater Manchester. But he talks about putting people in the House of Lords. Perhaps he could explain why he put forward for a peerage the former MP, Labour MP Tom Watson, who spread vicious conspiracy theories that were totally and utterly untrue, damaged public discourse and inflicted misery on innocent people.
You've got a 29-year-old who's done nothing.
You shouldn't criticise other members. Also, you're not responsible for the other parties. You are the Prime Minister that's answering the questions, not asking the questions.
Yes.
Order. Is somebody wanting to challenge my decision? Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, the truth is the country is paying the price of this endless cycle of chaos and distraction. The Tory economic crash means that millions of mortgage holders will pay thousands of pounds more next year. And the blame lies squarely at the door of a government more focused on the internal wars of the Tory party than the needs of the country. Does he not think that those responsible should hang their heads in shame?
Mr. Speaker, as I said right at the beginning of the session, our number one economic priority is to reduce inflation so that we can restrain the increase in interest rates. But one thing we know that we need to do that is to reduce our borrowing and debt, Mr. Speaker. That's how we will bring interest and mortgage rates down. But last week, what did we see? Labour confusion with the Shadow Chancellor attempting to water down their plans to borrow £28 billion more a year. But she was promptly overruled by the Shadow Energy Secretary, the former leader, who said that they were 100% not abandoning their pledge. It really looks like Labour's offer never changes. It's uncontrolled borrowing and more chaos with Ed Miliband.
There's only one party. There's only one party that broke the economy. They're sitting right there.
Chaos with Ed Miliband.
There's a reason they can't fix the problems facing the country, because they never take responsibility for the damage that they've done. And it's not just Johnson. The Prime Minister's immediate predecessor is hoping to reward those who made her reign such a rip-roaring success.
Well, 6 weeks of it.
On her honours list are the masterminds of that kamikaze budget, the economic extremists of the Institute of Economic Affairs, those whose disastrous ideas crashed the economy and left the country to pick up the pieces. Will the Prime Minister block that honours list, or will he buckle to her as well?
Mr. Speaker, if you want disastrous economic ideas, all you have to do is Labour's economic policy on energy. I mean, it's an energy policy that seeks to ban all new British oil and gas drilling, Mr. Speaker.
Your party has banned onshore wind farms, mate.
Our energy security at a time of international
It's the guy who banned
conflict.
onshore wind farms.
Like Putin
His
are the
party
only
did
people
that.
who will welcome such a policy.
Putin.
His
What?
predecessor once said that he wanted
mean
British
like the
jobs
people
for
who
British workers.
literally sponsor
His
your party
policy
to
is
exist?
British jobs for Russian workers.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, if he spent as much time focused
Jeremy's
on
in
the
the chat.
economy,
Hi,
the
Jeremy.
NHS and the asylum system as he does haggling with his
It is
predecessors
depressing.
about who gets honours, the
Let's
country
get
would
through
be
it
in a
together.
far better state. But once again, he's lost control, and once again, it's working people paying the price. And if he disagrees with that, why not put it to the test?
scrapping the
End the
home insulation
boasting,
grant-
the excuses, the Tory chaos. See if he can finally find somebody, anybody, anywhere to vote for him and call a general election now.
Mr. Speaker, he talked about asylum just this week. It was the Labour Party that voted against plans to tackle illegal migration. Just this week, it was the Labour Party that voted
You're the
against
people who failed
plans
to
tackle
enact.
disruptive protesters by their funding eco-zealots, Mr. Speaker. But
What?
we're getting on and delivering for the country. We're delivering
Your
record
policies have
employment
destroyed
and the
this
fastest
nation,
wage growth
you
in
minute
years, Mr.
turd.
Speaker. It's clear only the Conservatives are going to deliver for the people of Britain.
Oh, God, it's on about delivering again. Quick, do the PMQ bingo.
Mr. Speaker, crime is down significantly and falling. Police officer numbers are at an all-time high. But the
What?
police funding formula
God, we're a
remains
slabbergammon.
elderly and out of date and penalises counties
you're
like my
elderly and
own
out
of
of date,
Hampshire
mate.
to the tune of many millions of pounds. Previous administrations have made the commitment that a new
Vote is
police
on my
funding
bingo
formula
card.
would be in
Yeah.
place by the general election. Can I invite the
Votes,
Prime Minister to make the
protests.
same commitment, please?
Really important stuff that's affecting
Mr. Speaker,
people's day-to-day
recognise
lives.
that the current police funding formula no longer accurately reflects
People's mortgages
demands
have
on
gone up by
policing,
hundreds of
and that is
pounds
why
this
the
week.
review is carefully considering local factors.
He's like, oh, yeah,
for
but what
each
about
police
votes,
force.
eh?
Our priority is to deliver a
800 people
robust,
came over in a
future-proof
day,
funding
a couple of
formula.
days ago.
But it is
800
important
people
that
in
we
a day.
take the time
He's like, oh, yeah,
to
we're
get that
tackling it.
right.
We're
And I know
delivering.
that the Home
We're
Office
delivering.
will continue to keep the House
He already
updated
came over in
on
the
our progress.
whole of
Now comes the
2017.
leader of the SNP, Stephen Flynn.
Thank you, Mr.
Ooh, it's
Speaker.
gonna be difficult,
I would just
isn't
like
it?
to echo the sentiments of the Prime Minister and indeed the Leader of the Opposition in relation to the terrible
Sturgeon getting arrested
incident
over the
in
weekend.
Nottingham, and indeed our thoughts are with all of those still reeling from the tragedy at Grenfell all these
Police
years.
numbers at an all-time
later.
high. Is he effing
Mr.
high?
Speaker, during his ill-fated leadership bid late last summer, the Prime Minister warned of the perils of mortgage rate rises. Indeed, he stated, and I quote, "It's going to tip millions of people into misery, and it's going to mean we have absolutely no chance of winning the next election." Given that mortgage rates continue to rise, does he still agree with his own electoral analysis?
Yes. Very
Mr.
good question.
Speaker,
Very
which
well
is,
put.
Which is absolutely why our economic policy sets as our #1 priority to reduce inflation and thereby bring interest rates, which, by the way, Mr. Speaker, have also
Yeah,
risen
our
in
policy
pretty
is
much
to
every
do something
developed
about it.
economy
We're going to have a
around the world,
meeting.
more so
We're going to
in
have a
places
very
like
important
America, New
meeting.
Zealand, similar
I'm going
in
to turn
other
up with
countries,
a
as
red
well,
binder,
like
and we're going to
Australia.
make some
But it is
notes and put them in
important
the
order to
binder. That's
reduce
what I'm
inflation
doing.
That you do need to have
Doesn't know how to
control
use a debit
over
card,
borrowing,
exactly.
Mr. Speaker, which is why we, unlike the party opposite, are disciplined with regard
Go on,
to
have
the
a dig.
public finances. But
How
these
are you?
are the
Disciplined?
issues. These are the issues that we should be focused on.
this
I
country
saw that the
billions,
SNP yesterday, Mr. Speaker, had a meeting
not
to discuss
trillions.
their future. But the only thing they managed to decide was that they should send Nicola Sturgeon some flowers. So can he tell us,
Knew
did
he'd
he
try and
sign the
get that
card?
again. What did that have to do with the question you were asked?
Mr. Speaker, respectfully, I think the Prime Minister needs to grow up. There is an elephant in this
he's
here
tiny,
chamber when it
'cause
comes
he's only
to the
little.
dire economic circumstances facing the UK, and that's Brexit. The Tory benches,
big boots.
they don't want to accept it, and the Labour Party, they don't want to talk about it. But whether it's food prices, energy prices, or indeed mortgage prices, households in Scotland are being shafted by Brexit. So can I ask the Prime Minister, will he apologise for the cycle of misery that Westminster has caused?
Chance of being fine,
Mr. Speaker, while his party leader calls
Right,
Nicola
we go.
Sturgeon the most impressive politician in Europe, we are getting on delivering for the
On
people
with
of
delivering.
Scotland, Mr.
On with
Speaker.
delivering.
Paying half
This is
of
only
their
response
energy
to
bills,
anything.
making sure that pensions
On with
rise,
delivering.
making sure
I've got
that
no
there's
answer
support
to any of the
for those who need
questions.
it
The
with
fact
the
that
cost of
people's
living,
mortgages
and
have
crucially,
doubled
ensuring that we
overnight,
secure
but you
over
know,
200,000
we're delivering.
jobs by supporting Scotland's North Sea oil
Delivering.
and gas industry, something
Delivering.
opposed
Policy
by his
for-
party.
yeah.
Carl McCartney.
Policies stop wait for a
Afternoon,
windy
Speaker.
day.
Lincoln will
Exactly,
soon benefit
William.
from £20 million worth of levelling up funding to deliver a traffic bridge over the railway to stop the city being permanently gridlocked by the Labour City Council's huge Western Growth Corridor housing development. This is truly levelling up for areas of the north.
Shiny gammon.
Will my right honourable
Very
friend affirm
shiny
his
gammon.
commitment to my Lincoln constituents and businesses?
He's a
that he
very
and his
shiny
government will continue to help
gam-gam.
level up
He
Lincoln
shines like
and other
the
areas
shiny
in the north
things
of our great
shine.
country.
My honourable friend is a fantastic advocate
Lincoln.
for his constituents. I'm glad that he and Lincoln City Council were successful in their £20 million levelling up fund bid. The scheme will see 2 new bridges built across the railway line, improving access, reducing congestion. I very much look forward to seeing these plans progress, and he and I both share an ambition to make sure that we level up not just in
Remove all
Lincoln,
legal
but
route to
across the
immigration and
country.
talk about increasing legal immigration. Yeah.
The Leader of the Opposition recently ventured out of London, visiting my constituency, to deliver a one
He's out to
nation
help
British
out.
Labour
Good point.
vision of Scotland. However, he neglected to mention that he intends to continue London's plunder of Scotland's vast energy wealth, just like the Tories, continuing the economic vandalism of Brexit, just like the Tories, and deny Scotland's right to self-determination, just like the Tories. So perhaps the Prime Minister can tell me which London party leader is the greatest threat to Scottish democracy? The Tory to my right or the Tory to my left?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I apologise because I didn't hear fully the honourable gentleman's question, but I did. From what I could gather, I think he probably agrees with me that the Leader of the Opposition is not the right person to lead our country.
Theresa Villiers.
Really worried about the cost of living. Will the Prime Minister agree that it is completely wrong for Labour to be introducing new...
Haven't you got a toilet in Hogwarts to go and bloody haunt? Go on, sit down, Chipping Barnes.
Prime Minister.
What did she even say?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend is absolutely right to raise this important issue. While we are getting on providing significant support to families with the cost of living, the Labour Mayor of London, to whom transport has devolved, is busily putting it up, imposing
that's
the
the
ULEZ
system
charge
here.
against the
We
overwhelming
commentate
views of residents
as
and
it's happening.
businesses. It is disappointing. He is not listening to the British public.
If they were saying anything worth
of
any consequence, I wouldn't talk over it.
Working
Well, here we
families
are.
is totally backed by the Leader of the Opposition.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, new data from the End Child Poverty Coalition and Loughborough University has shown that your government's austerity measures have plunged 4.2 million children into poverty, 70% of them in working households. In Liverpool, Riverside, 42% are living in poverty, up 7% since 2015. So can the Prime Minister commit to scrapping the cruel and ineffectual two-child limit to lift 250,000 children out of poverty and meet with anti-poverty organisations?
Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to gently point out to the honourable lady that there are in fact 400,000 fewer children in absolute poverty than in 2010.
No.
And we also know, Mr. Speaker, that work is the best route out of poverty for families. So with employment, as we saw yesterday, at record levels, I'm pleased that there are now over 600,000 fewer children in workless households in 2010.
He's
On
like
the specific policy that she raises,
dog in the cartoon,
it actually
and
ensures
everything's
fairness,
fine.
Mr. Speaker, by
burning
asking
house,
families
drinking
on
his tea.
benefits to make the same financial decisions as families supporting themselves solely through work.
Mean dog.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, earlier this week, the all-party group on coalfield communities published our report into next steps in levelling up
He said
the former
absolute
coalfield
poverty, not
communities,
relative
which I know
poverty.
the Prime
Yeah,
Minister's received a
exactly,
copy of his inbox. As a proud MP for Newcastle under Lyme, I'm
And a slab of
delighted
gammon.
with the funding that we've had from government through the Future High Streets Fund and the Town Deal, but there's always more to do. So will the Prime Minister commit to reading our report, carefully considering our recommendations and working out what more we can do to level up our coalfield communities across the whole of the United Kingdom?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I very much welcome the work of the APPG for coalfield communities and indeed the breadth and ambition of their policy contributions. We are committed to levelling up the UK by spreading opportunity more equally across the country, investing in and empowering places that need it the most, and including coalfield communities. And I look forward to discussing and hearing from the honourable
We're going to
gentleman
have a discussion
further.
about it. We'll have a meeting. Let's have a meeting,
Speaker,
quick.
My vulnerable
Have a meeting.
constituent whose finances are held in trust was wrongly billed £4,000 by 2 energy companies that now no longer exist as a result of the energy market crisis. Energy is one of the most most basic services and there is no Charter of Rights for consumers. We still don't have this resolved. Does the Prime Minister agree that we need such a charter?
Mr Speaker, I'll happily ensure that the appropriate minister writes the Honourable Lady with a specific response on her constituents so we can try and resolve that issue.
Gary Sambrook.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Recently, the Independent Regulator for Social Housing issued a notice against Birmingham City Council for the state of its social housing, with 23,000 homes not meeting the decent home standard, over 17,000 homes not receiving asbestos checks, over 15,000 houses not having electrical safety checks, and over 1,000 homes not having fire risk assessments. Rather refreshingly and honestly and astonishingly, a leaked Labour memo put the blame for this at the heart of the Labour group in Birmingham.
Oh, right, so it's not the government's fault who've been in charge for the last 13 years.
Mr Speaker, but it's time that we have serious intervention in Birmingham to make sure that people can have decent homes to live in.
Mr Speaker, the failings identified in Birmingham are wholly unacceptable. The Regulator for Social Housing has made clear that Birmingham must take immediate action to address those issues and will be monitoring the Council's
Thank you for that
progress
softball
closely.
question.
I also understand that the Secretary of State has requested a meeting with Birmingham City Council and will be holding them to account.
Fabian Hamilton.
Mr Speaker, Ilkley Homes builds thousands of modular houses every year in its factory near Leeds, many of which are completely carbon zero, meaning no bills at all for residents. But today, it is facing the prospect of collapse, putting 4,200 future homes and 1,500 current jobs at risk. Now, given that the Home Builders Federation says new housing units could drop to just 120,000 next year, does the Prime Minister now accept that his government's scrapping of housing targets was the wrong decision?
No, we've been delivering houses
Speaker,
that haven't been built. Like you've been delivering the 40 hospitals that never got built.
But what I can say is,
It'd be wrong for me to comment on
no apology
the fact that he's useless.
respecting what local communities want in their local areas. Whilst the party opposite may want to ride roughshod over the views of local communities and impose top-down housing targets and carpet over the green
the
belt,
party that blocked legislation to make all rented properties fit for habitation is raising an issue about homes being fit for habitation.
As we speak, the Royal Air Force is operating the Hercules farewell flypast over all parts of the UK. For over 107 years, my constituents at 47 Squadron have defended our country, including over 50 operating the legendary Hercules. Now, as the squadron stands down, would my right honourable friend join the whole House in paying tribute to this remarkable record of service of this amazing squadron? They're all men and women who have made their country proud.
Well, Mr Speaker, I join my honourable friend in paying tribute to 47 Squadron. Their association with the Hercules now stretches for 45 years. And although their vital work at the heart of defence has often been unheralded, the squadron has served with professionalism and distinction throughout. I think the whole House will join me in saying that the personnel and crews can be rightly proud, and they have our full thanks.
Mr Speaker, my constituent Sarah has been let down by this government. Her elderly father, a veteran living with cancer, has developed serious heart problem. His next appointment is scheduled for November. In the cost of living crisis, my constituent paid for private care, as he cannot wait 5 months for an appointment. He has now been diagnosed with heart failure. This is the reality of Tory Britain. Elderly and sick people neglected and turned away. The Conservatives have broken the NHS and they've broken Britain. The British public deserves so much better. Only the Labour Party can deliver this. So when will the Prime Minister call a general election?
General election question.
Well, Mr Speaker, I am very sorry to hear about, I believe it was Sarah's father, and I hope he has a speedy and gets all the treatment that he needs. With regard to the NHS, Mr Speaker, we're investing record sums in the NHS, but also with more doctors, more nurses, more diagnostic scans to identify cancers earlier, and with elective surgical hubs to get the wait lists down. We're starting to see progress, having practically eliminated those waiting 18 months. But there is more work to do, Mr Speaker, and I'm pleased that the NHS is fully supporting our plan and getting on with delivering it for people.
Hey, he said it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister and the Health
what a waste
Secretary
of
for the
time.
recent announcement that the Epsom and St Helier NHS Trust can proceed with plans to improve and upgrade St Helier and build a brand new hospital in Sutton. Now, the NHS Trust is really ready to go. They're further along than other trusts in that cohort. So can the Prime Minister assure me that when the Trust is ready to go, the Treasury and the Government will be ready to give the green light to them as well?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for all his campaigning and focus on this issue for his constituents. We remain committed to the new hospital scheme for the Epsom and St Helier University Hospitals Trust. It will deliver brand new state-of-the-art facilities as part of our new hospital programme. I know the department are working closely with the Trust to make sure that we can progress works as soon as possible.
Working on privatising the NHS as quickly and subversively as they can. Yes, Dan, you're absolutely right.
Mr. Speaker, throughout the war in Ukraine, the largest mobile operator, Hughes has kept its services operating at 93% and is investing millions in Ukraine's recovery. Will the Prime Minister therefore use next week's Ukraine Recovery Conference to bring together governments and the businesses to invest in Ukraine's telecoms recovery and ensure the people of Ukraine are kept connected with their loved ones throughout the war?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend for the very thoughtful and powerful
absolutely no
question. He's
points
absolutely
in this
right
PMQs once
about
again, says
the aim
outdoor
of
next week.
week's Ukraine Recovery
Can't
Conference
disagree,
Summit,
mate.
which we're very
Can't
proud
disagree.
to be hosting, and indeed the theme of
That's
that
going to be why I
summit
don't
is
stop
how
it.
to bring in
It'll
private
make this
capital
hell go
to
on
help
for longer.
rebuild
Do I look
Ukraine
like I'm
after
having a
this
good time
devastating
here?
war. And I join him in paying tribute to all those companies who, in the face of the onslaught that they are seeing, are providing essential services for the people of Ukraine. They deserve our absolute admiration
The
and support.
onslaught. Right, yeah. The onslaught that your party helped
Acknowledge and
happen.
celebrate carers, of which
Let's not
there
never
are
forget
thousands
that.
across beautiful
They are
Hastings and
Russian
Rye.
aggressor
Would the Prime
enablers.
Minister join me in thanking them all for their priceless value and congratulate Hastings Voluntary Action and the Isabel Blackman Centre in receiving Local Care, the Carers Awards for their support of unpaid carers in our communities, and the outstanding CQC-rated Radfield Home Care in Hastings, which recently won a national award.
God, what a national award.
I join my
Well done.
honourable friend in congratulating carers in her constituency for all their awards. I'm also incredibly proud
well done
of
all
our
your
health and care
awards.
staff across
They've
the
won awards.
country
We won
and
awards, you
recognise
know.
their extraordinary
People can't
commitment.
afford to pay
And I'd
their
also like to pay
mortgages.
tribute
They can't
to
afford to
unpaid
pay their
carers
heating
and young
bills.
carers
They can't
for all
afford
that they are
to
doing
pay
in
to look
Hastings
after
and
their own
across our
children.
nation.
Thank you very much,
She's
Mr.
won an
Speaker.
award.
Funding
Oh, £5
to
super
bring
chat.
desperately needed
Thank you very much, Alexis.
inpatient mental health beds to Bedford is sitting in the bank account of our local mental health trust, not to be touched because of this government's ridiculous capital spending limits. So will the Prime Minister will meet with East London Foundation Trust, apply some common sense and find a way to release the cash to get this mental health unit built so my constituents don't have to travel miles to access services?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are investing record sums in NHS capital, and particularly I can tell the honourable member that we're putting more money into mental health services and taking more action than any previous government. At the heart of the NHS long-term plan is the largest expansion of mental health services in a generation. I'll ensure that the appropriate minister writes to him with an update on the conversations between his trust and their local capital plans.
Henry Smith. Dawn of the NHS. I'm just going to pause that there to say thank you very much to Alexis G for the £5 super chat. Sunak talks about helping families, but not everyone has a family. If someone is single, lives alone, and has no family, are they worthless to Sunak? Yes, they are. But then families are also worthless to Sunak because he's a multi-millionaire. He's worth over £700 million. He doesn't care about you. Doesn't care about me. Doesn't care about anything except making him and his wife and his buddies from school a bit more money.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What assessment has the Prime Minister made of the Eurozone being in recession and the UK economy experiencing growth?
Mr. Speaker, as we've seen recently, it's not just the OBR, but the OECD, the Bank of England and the IMF who have all upgraded the growth forecast.
I've upgraded it from like utterly dire to not quite as dire.
That are
Oh, they've upgraded it. Oh my God, the way that they spin
39 women have died violently in Northern Ireland since 2017. The police are called to a domestic violence incident every 16 minutes, and ours is now one of the most dangerous regions in Europe to be a woman. Yeah. Stormont has consulted on a strategy to tackle violence against women, but there are no ministers to take it forward. The outstanding Women's Aid Federation learned last month that their core funding is being taken away. In the demoralising absence of a government, will the Prime Minister work with me and others to ensure that strategy is enacted and funded so that we can tackle the cultures and behaviours that are having such devastating impacts on women in Northern Ireland?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Speaker, I join with the Honourable Lady in saying that it's absolutely right that we do everything to stamp out violence against women and girls. That's why the government passed the
by not believing them when they say that someone's assaulted them. Great policy, mate.
Quadruple funding for victim support. She's also right to
we do that for
highlight
burglary.
That the people of Northern Ireland are not getting.
You have been burgled. Oh, that's interesting. Were you asking for it? What were you wearing?
And I'll continue to work hard to bring that about.
Philip Davis.
Piss off.
Liar. One of the socialist landmines the Prime Minister has inherited from the former member for Uxbridge and South Ruislip.
Socialist
I'm sure the Prime Minister remembers him. He's the one who said that we should be more conservative. If only he'd had a majority of 80 and been Prime Minister, he might have been able to do something about it.
He's having a dig at Boris Johnson here.
One of the landmines he left behind
the socialist
was
policies
the idiotic
for
triumph for the nanny state of banning buy one get one free and other special offers on products that the Department of Health thought was unhealthy. Now, at the best of times, that is an idiotic triumph for the nanny state, but during a cost of living crisis, it is utterly bonkers. So can I ask the Prime Minister if he will intervene, pursue a more conservative agenda, as the former member for Uxbridge would want him to do, and scrap this ridiculous policy?
That's quite a funny question.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend? He's long highlighted.
Sticking the boot in there, Boris Johnson.
Why,
you won't be missed.
Office, given the concerns that he and others had raised about the impact on the cost of living, we already have, as you know, postponed the introduction of this policy. No final decisions have been made, but I'll continue to take what he said very seriously in all our deliberations.
Stephen Doherty.
Mr. Speaker, Citizens Advice Cymru have told me of soaring numbers of people coming to them struggling with housing affordability. And last year, the monthly cost of a new mortgage rose by 61%.
That's me, 2 cakes. Very good.
And most fixed-rate mortgages coming to an end in this current 12-month period were set at interest rates below 2%. So the crisis will worsen for homeowners and renters. Yeah. So what price does the Prime Minister have for my constituents suffering the consequences of Tory economic chaos? Should they cut back on food, switch off the electric and gas, or get further into Tory-fuelled expensive debt?
Yeah, bring the price of one item down.
Mr. Speaker, our number one priority is to halve inflation so we can reduce the upward pressure on interest rates.
Bog off,
his
Boris.
should know that
and that's basically what he was saying. Bog off,
absolutely
Boris.
Worse is his party's plans for tens of billions of pounds.
He's not even cold in the ground yet. Not even cold in the political ground.
But what I would say is for those homeowners that are worried, what they can do is ask for help through the Support for Mortgage Interest Payment Scheme, which has recently been adjusted. That support is there available for them. And my honourable friend, the Chancellor, has spoken with the FCA to ensure that banks treat all those in difficulty with the fairness and compassion that they need.
Compassion and banks. Come on. They're two words that go hand in hand, aren't they?
And I'm looking forward to visiting the opening of the deep geothermal plant at the Eden project championed by the member for St Austell and Newquay next week. Will the Prime Minister join me in meeting with MPs that want to join him in having the benefits of a deep geothermal plant in their own constituencies?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for his work on this report? I know it's an area that he's rightly passionate about. The government does support the development of geothermal projects in the UK, providing it can be done at an acceptable cost to consumers and in an environmentally friendly manner. I will ensure that he gets a meeting with a relevant
someone would dispose of you in an environmentally friendly manner, is she?
Lillian Greenwood.
Mr. Speaker, Nottingham is devastated by the senseless attacks that took place on our streets yesterday. The thoughts and prayers of the whole city are with the family and friends of those killed and with those injured. It is absolutely heartbreaking to see the pictures of University of Nottingham students, Barnaby and Grace, whose young lives, so full of potential, have been tragically cut short. As ever, we thank the emergency services who acted quickly and courageously to save lives. Will the Prime Minister ensure that his government provides the police, the universities and others in our city with everything that they need to support our constituents following these horrendous events?
Minister. Mr. Speaker, like the rest of the country, I've been moved by the heartbreaking tributes from their loved ones. This is an extraordinarily difficult time and every parent's worst nightmare. The hearts of the whole country are with the families and all those who have lost their lives. As the Honourable Lady will, I'm sure, understand, I can't comment further at this stage, given there's an ongoing situation, but the Home Secretary will be making a statement after Prime Minister's questions.
Final question, David Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my constituents in Ickenham and South Hayfield benefit enormously from the work of the police based in the nearby Uxbridge police station, which only remains open because of the campaign by the Conservative-led council to stop the Mayor of London from closing it down. Does my right honourable friend agree that as we invest in more police, those police need good local police stations to work
more police. No. Invest in replacing the police.
Mr. Speaker, I think my honourable friend put the point very well. Whether it's campaigning to keep open their local police station or indeed opposing the ULEZ charge to put up costs for hard-working families, it's the Conservatives in Uxbridge that are delivering for their community.
Delivery! And there we go. We wrap up. Prime Minister's questions. What a joke. What a sick joke. This whole this nonsense, this absolute bloody nonsense is. So I'll just make myself bigger. And I did crush. Hello everyone in the chat there. Yeah, so I don't have to listen to this nonsense anymore. Hello, how you doing? We've got Steve, we've got Scoobin, we've got Shazek, we've got Master Templar, we've got Simon M, Duke Vengeance in there. Vendetta. We've got a lot of vendetta and vengeances going on, which is always good. Yeah, it's Tory time. God, they're such shit, aren't they? They're such monumental shit. Like the fact that he just does not, for 1 second, take any responsibility for any of the awful things the Tories have done. And every time something's challenged to him, he's always got like little weasel words to use, hasn't he? About like, oh, you know, if you talk about it in absolute terms, we've actually got more children out of poverty. And it's like, it doesn't work that way, because you're dealing with like poverty around the world, because obviously you have to be substantially poorer to be poor in another country that's already poor. In a rich country, it's a lot easier to be poor, put it that way, especially you've got no income coming in. Talking of income coming in, Super Chat's still open for the next few minutes. Anyway, so yeah, you mean the same police you cut in terms of wages, numbers, and wreck their pension? Yes, that's the police that they're going to support, because it's the party of law and order. When the Prime Minister's not breaking the law, when Boris Johnson's not breaking the law, when all these people who broke the law during Partygate aren't given gongs and peerages and positions for life in the House of Lords for life. 29-year-old random young blonde woman given a peerage for life because Boris likes her. I mean, for heaven's sake. I mean, really. Delivering like that courier that was in news for chucking people's parcels about. I kind of like get a little bit cringy actually, where it feels like he's got to say the word delivering like eight times. Remember back in the 1990, I think, World Cup, when they had a running joke that they were slipping in song lyrics into any interviews they did. They had to, I think it's like Madonna lyrics or something. They had to like try and slip it in to the interview. I think he's got like a challenge going with his backbenchers. He's like, do you reckon I can say delivering 50 times in the space of one Prime Minister's questions? Yeah, 50. I reckon you could do 50. Come on. And they're all waiting for the 50th time that he says the word delivering. It's just embarrassing. It's so freaking embarrassing. Sunak is the measly weasel. He's also the prime miniature, which is just cracked me up on Friday when I heard that for the first time, and I can't stop laughing. The police are wrecked. All the old officers are gone. The average experience is now 4 years, and new recruits have degrees paid for by taxes with no requirement to spend any time as an officer. Yeah, it's just, and the vetting was horrific in the last 20 years. And as a result of that, you've got situations like Wayne Couzens, who was allowed to stay on as a member of the Metropolitan Constabulary when he was demonstrably, like, obviously a wrong un. Like, his nickname was a word that I can't really say on this unless I want to get demonetized. It began with R and ended in ist. And that was his nickname in like WhatsApp groups where they'd all joke about, and there's thousands of them. There's thousands of police officers who weren't vetted properly because they were just, anyone can join failed in life. Why not become a police officer? Don't worry, we won't look into your background or nothing. Why would you want to do that? Is that the speech writer who made May say symbols? Yeah, indeed. William Hawkins saying, well, the Met has always been special. Indeed. Starmer needs to keep banging on about an election as much as possible. Yeah, but I fear that the Tories aren't that stupid. I know they're stupid, and I know they're very, very irresponsible. I mean, incredibly irresponsible. But I don't think they're going to go for an early election because they know what that will entail. They know they're going to get their asses handed to them, and I think they're going to hang on as long as humanly possible. This happens. This happens a lot with parties when they've no distance left to run. It happened with Gordon Brown. He should have really called an election in 2007 when he took over from Blair. He should have called an election then. It would have been actually in his interest to call the election then. He might have squeaked it, but then after the 2008 collapse, financial collapse crisis, then it wasn't going to happen. And the same thing happened with Major in 1992. He won in the May of 1992, and then by the autumn, the economy had absolutely gone to shit. We dropped out the exchange rate mechanism. It was a huge disaster, and then it was just a dead party walking for the following 5 years. But he tried to hang on after scandal after scandal after scandal. He tried to hang on, hoping that something would come up. And it didn't. Well, things did come up. Obviously, they got into more trouble for doing horrible things. But back in the day, they used to resign when they got caught doing horrible things. Not like Boris Johnson or Trump, who were those bloody men children. A couple of man-childs. Does that work? Who never think they do anything wrong. Like, everything's always someone else's fault. It's never our fault. It's the blob. It's the woke variety. Did anyone see the clip yesterday? I think it was of Yvette Cooper taking on Suella Braverman, and then at the end of it, like, just putting all of her ill deeds to just listing all the terrible things that she's done. And then at the end of it, she's just like, oh, and by the way, turns out you're a vegetarian, so you probably eat more tofu than I do. Which I thought was a good line, good line. Yeah, but these people, anyway, they don't think that the rules apply to them. They're like a naughty child who, when you catch them, smash the window. You saw them smash a window. You saw them pick up the football and kick it at the window in order to smash it. They go, it wasn't me. Which is even more frustrating than the fact that they smashed the window in the first place. The doctrines of collective and individual responsibility are distant memories, just like the ministerial code, says William Hawkins. It's one of my hopes that Labour will hopefully bring that back. Steve said he even dodged answering the quest to give Nottingham what he needs at this sad time. Unbelievable. He dodges everything. He doesn't answer any of the questions. It is a huge waste of time, Prime Minister's questions. And I have to watch it, so I like to drag you lovely people into my misery. But you don't have to be here. But yeah, that's why. Well, someone in the chat was like, "Why are you always talking over what they're saying?" And I'm like, I don't really care what they're saying. Well, when it's Sunak, I try and shut up when they're actually asking the question. But when it's Sunak's response, it's always just the same. It's the same. There's no point in listening. You know what he's going to say. Play Rishi Bingo. When Boris fell, I thought it'd be early this year. When Truss fell, I thought it'd be about now. With Rishi, I still think this year, but it's rapidly diminishing too. That's Master Templar. His the way he's looking at it is like damage limitation. When can I call an election and lose the least amount of MPs? And I have the feeling that the longer that they leave it, the more MPs they're going to lose. I have a feeling about that, but you never know what's going to happen. A week is a long time in politics. A year, incredibly a long time in politics. we don't know what's going to happen in the next 18 months, but they are going to hang out till the very end, which is a worry as well, because if they hold on to a winter 2024-25 election, the very latest that they can hold on, I think, is in January 2025, we're going to have a winter general election again, which doesn't happen very often. It's only happened twice in the last 60, 50, 70 years. But if it does happen, it's horrible. No one wants an election in the middle of winter. Not even the people who are standing for election want an election in the middle of winter, because you have to go around knocking on people's doors. And when it's cold, no one wants to stand there in the doorway talking to you about your policies, all right? Because it's cold, all right? We want to shut the door. We want to just snuggle up under a duvet on the couch and drink some hot cocoa and try and keep warm as best we can in this country in which a large number of us cannot afford to pay to turn the heating on. We suffered all through winter. It's got a bit warmer now. You'll see I'm still wearing a hoodie. It is quite warm outside, but my house is, well, it's not my house, but my partner's house that she lets me lodge in is particularly cold all through the year. I think it was designed this way. John Lewis says, are you going to apologise for the slur against Caroline Lucas from this morning's cast? I don't know what I said. What did I say about Caroline Lucas? I like Caroline Lucas. She's all right. I might have had a slur against Jenny Jones because she voted for Brexit. That's slightly different. I have no truck with that. If you vote for Brexit, you tell people to vote for Brexit, and then the government just do these horrible things that they can get away with because we don't have to answer to anyone anymore. We don't have to explain things to our partners in the EU. Why did you do that terrible thing, taking away workers' rights? I don't have to explain it anymore. We're not part of the EU. Maybe the UN will have a word. Oh yeah, the UN turn up and they say, hey, all these children in poverty, what are you going to do about that? And they say, oh, we massaged the statistics, and we said, actually, if you think about it, these children are in absolute poverty because they're not actually starving to death. They're just hungry. There's a whole load of difference in that. So, yeah. I'll wear a kilt, says Scoopnum. And Master Ember says, I'm in Cardiff. It's been awfully hot. Phone box chicken. I think a lot of stations have been downgraded or closed in Coventry. There appears to be two main ones, but the city centre building is old and will be sold for students. Flat. If you talk about train stations, they get me started on the situation in trains in this country. And then crime jumped in the area. That's from Duke. Yeah, indeed. Warsaw used to have its own massive police station until the Tories got in and they closed it down. Yeah, the party of law and order, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, right. I'm going to wrap it up there because it's coming up to 10 to 1. I'm sure you don't listen to me rabbiting on all afternoon. Things to do, haven't we? Labour Social will be back tomorrow morning at 9:30 with Phil Morehouse for Morning Brew with Phil Morehouse, and you're free to jump in the chat and ask questions and things. I'll be in the chat with you, one of the commoners in the chat right away, hoping that Phil might notice what we're writing. It helps that you throw in a super chat. Just saying, like if the super chat, he generally does read it out. You lumped her in with Jenny Jones when whining about the Green House of Lord member. Oh, I just meant that she was part of the people who were. I mean, with Peter Stefanovic. No, Stefanovic. Maybe. Who were pushing for the fatal amendment to the fatal attraction. No, fatal motion. This morning she was pushing for that, but no, I like Caroline Lucas. She's all right. She can stay, although she's not. She's standing down as an MP, which I think is sad. I'd rather she stayed on, and I hope that whoever takes her place, possibly as the Green representative for Brighton, is half as good at least. Anyway, so so anything that you feel like I've said about disparaging around Caroline Lucas, I didn't mean it like that. She's one of the good ones, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, right, okay. So now that we've sorted out that little bit of putting my house in order, I will say thanks for watching, and thanks for the chat, thanks for super chats, thanks for all of my YouTube members and all of the patrons to Labour Social. You are wonderful, and you are keeping this wonderful channel alive through sheer endeavour and tomfoolery and spit and sellotape and or gaffer tape. Fatal motion, like what Elvis had, because he died on the bog. Brighton is near London, right? Yeah, I think it's a bit south of London. I don't know. All those southern places look the same to me. Little joke there. Right, okay, so thanks very much for watching. Like I say, Labour Social, tomorrow morning, 9:30. If you want to join us on the Discord server, which we go on every morning to listen to James O'Brien talk, and then we talk over him sometimes, you can become a patron over at patreon.com/Labour Social. So the link is in the description down here. So until next time, thanks for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.